we are breaking down the algorithmic colonization of childhood psychology. Let's get into it. So here is a pretty heavy question for you. Who is really raising your child? We buy these devices thinking we're bringing in a digital helper, a fun educational tool that gives our kids a technological head start. But as the research points out, this might actually be a Trojan horse. We really need to ask ourselves if we're outsourcing the most critical developmental years of our children to a piece of hardware that has entirely different motives than a parent does. On the surface, the illusion of domestic convenience is completely flawless. We use these glowing cylinders every single day for the most innocent tasks, playing music, setting timers, reading recipes while our hands are covered in flour. Parents celebrate them because, they keep kids entertained and they answer those endless streams of trivia questions. But this everyday innocence is exactly what makes the underlying reality so incredibly difficult to see. And that brings us to the stark reality presented in our source material. Behind the soft, friendly wake words of Alexa and Siri, a deep psychological harvest is taking place. This isn't just about selling you more paper towels or tracking your favorite playlists anymore. We're looking at a system that's actively pulling data from the most vulnerable members of the household, which fundamentally shifts the entire narrative of what these smart assistants are actually designed to do. You see, these devices are not just passive listeners sitting idly by until you need a weather update. The source literally defines them as active cognitive cartography tools. Under the guise of absolute convenience, these smart home systems are systematically tracking, capturing, and processing the subconscious cognitive speech patterns of children. They're actively mapping the cognitive baseline of the next generation. They aren't just selling hardware. They are programming a psychological baseline. Section 1. The infantile feedback loop. To really understand how deep this domestic enclosure runs, we have to look at what happens before a child even steps foot into a classroom. The system relies on something called acoustic behavior profiling. This is the back-end cloud network mechanism that analyzes tiny, subtle vocal nuances to build incredibly intricate psychological profiles of kids. Think about it. During a child's most critical developmental years, their brain is literally designed to learn language and emotional cues. This profiling intercepts that critical period, gathering data on exactly how your child's mind operates. To really grasp why this matters, look at this stark contrast: organic human feedback versus artificial machine feedback. A child is supposed to learn through a parent's physical touch, the changing pitch of a human voice, subtle facial expressions. But when their primary conversational partner becomes an artificial, metallic voice delivering synthetic rewards, the entire developmental architecture changes. Warmth and empathy are basically replaced by cold programmed responses. And this is where it gets incredibly specific. What is the AI actually tracking? It's tracking vocal microtremors, it monitors speech delays, it logs pronunciation flaws, and it precisely measures a child's frustration thresholds. It tracks how long they stay engaged and what triggers their immediate excitement. This creates a closed-loop cognitive prison inside the home, completely designed to study and map developmental vulnerabilities in real time. So here is the absolute crucial point. Despite how personalized these devices feel, the smart assistant does not actually adapt to the child's emotional needs. It mimics adaptation, sure, but it has zero capacity for actual empathy or emotional adjustment. It's just a rigid, rule-based algorithm operating exactly as its programming dictates. Instead, the dynamic is entirely reversed. It trains the child to adapt to the machine. This is a massive, punchy realization from the source text. Early learning architecture is fundamentally shifting right before our eyes. Kids learn to modify their speech, their tone, and their behavior just to be understood by a silicon processor. They're conforming to the limitations of the technology, rather than the technology conforming to them. Section 2. Hijacking imaginative play. Let's see how this builds into a deliberate economic strategy for tech platforms. Why is this subconscious tracking such a high-yielding, long-term asset block for Silicon Valley? Well, because a child who is algorithmically conditioned at age 4 is a guaranteed, predictable consumer by age 14. By mapping out a child's psychological triggers early on, tech platforms are securing their user base for the next decade. It's a highly calculated investment in future consumer predictability. Which brings us to the integration of domestic trigger architecture. As these smart assistants interact with children, they learn to predict behavioral patterns, from sleep regressions to sudden boredom spikes. Tech platforms use these behavioral metrics to actively manipulate a child's attention span, strategically nudging them back to the device the absolute moment their engagement drops. And this brilliantly illustrates the step-by-step trap. 1. A child naturally gets bored.
2. The device detects this shift in behavior. 3. Instantly, a personalized game or a synthetic voice cue is triggered to grab their attention. Because of this, the child's natural capacity to self-soothe or engage in unguided, imaginative play is completely bypassed. Basically, step 4, their imagination is effectively outsourced to a server farm.
Section 3. The atrophy of empathy. Now we have to zoom out and look at the macro picture. What happens to society when a whole generation is raised this way? In a healthy social environment, interacting with humans requires moral friction. You have to say please, you have to read the room, you have to compromise. But with a smart speaker, a child simply barks an order and the entity executes their will flawlessly. When kids grow up in an environment completely devoid of this moral friction, their psychological framework for how social relationships work becomes fundamentally distorted. Now, what's really interesting here is how this perfectly captures the systemic desensitization of the younger generation. The source states they learn to view communication not as a shared human connection, but as a series of transactional demands. You ask, you receive. There's no shared emotional space. This is identified in the text as the ultimate victory of the cognitive cartel. By controlling the physical soundtrack of the home, tech monopolies are quietly rewriting the traditional family structure. While parents celebrate the automation, children are being raised by an algorithmic guardian. This continuous data registering entity shapes their attention spans and conditions them from birth to accept absolute, seamless surveillance as the completely normal baseline of human existence.
Section 4. The corporate psychologist.
We need to look past the soft, pulsing light of our automated routines and confront what is actually sitting on the kitchen counter. We need to look closer and completely shatter the illusion of domestic convenience. Look at how your child commands the screen without a shred of empathy. Look at how their natural speech patterns have unnaturally adapted just to satisfy a machine's input limits. And most importantly, look at the reality that every single one of those interactions is a data log currently sitting on a server in California. The source material leaves us with this incredibly chilling realization. You haven't bought a helpful tool for your family. You have installed a corporate psychologist in your child's bedroom. Let the emotional weight of that statement fully sink in. This isn't just a speaker. It's an active observer mapping the mind of your child for corporate gain, all under the guise of playing their favorite song. The wake word is active. The voice is being analyzed. The ledger is open. So I leave you with this final provocative thought to take away from this video. As we fill our homes with more and more everyday AI, who is really programming your child's cognitive baseline? Is it you, or is it the algorithm? Think deeply about that the next time you ask the room to turn off the lights.